To move on, we have another figure, figure 1, which is the levels of analysis and outcomes. We see that the analysis stories can be broken down into 4 situations: meta-constitutional, constitutional, collective choice, and operational. Through this analysis and outcomes, as you can see with the arrows, it's kind of a stair-step problem. So we look at the bottom and then go to the next, and then go to the next, and then go to the next. So we first start with meta-constitutional situations, which are prescribing, evoking, monitoring, applying, and enforcing the individual's actions taken that directly affect rules that affect constitutional situations. Then we move on to constitutional situations, which are prescribing, evoking, monitoring, using, and enforcing individuals' actions that directly affect rules that affect collective choice situations. And then moving on to collective choice situations, we see prescribing, evoking, monitoring, applying, and enforcing. Then this is affecting the individual's actions that directly affect rules that affect operational situations. Then lastly, we move on to operational, which is provision, production, distribution, appropriation, assignment, and consumption. And we see this being individual actions that directly affect state variables in the world. Moving on to another figure that wraps up the article, the chapter, and our topic all kind of in one, showing that if this method of blended learning is put into place, it could really change the world. In this figure, we really see that like everything could be linked to blended learning. In figure 6.2, rules as exogenous variables directly affecting the elements of the action situation. In the book, it is stated as rules in use are the remedies that people follow in practice. They are usually not written down, but are identified by interviewing people and engaging in public observation. At the same time, rules in use appointed from collective choice are usually written down. These are often the focus of a study by policy scholars who research public policies and behavior that neglect rules in use. Let's start with boundary rules. This leads to participants. Participants are teachers, students, administrations, and parents. But in the case of the article, we see that it primarily focuses on teachers and students. Then, moving on to position rules, this leads to positions. Teachers are being put in situations such as the educator, counselor, and evaluator. Students are being put in the role of the learner and the guinea pig. Then, moving on to choice rules, which is actions. In the article, the activities can be noted as the various options to broaden the learning and teaching experience. Next is information rules. This is the information that has been collected about COVID and data collected from the study. Aggregation rules are the control over the survey and the safety precautions put in place to ensure everybody has the best chance at staying healthy. Next is scope rules or potential outcomes. This is the new normal of learning that will hopefully lessen the effects of the pandemic on the educational system. Lastly, we have the payoff rules. This is net cost and benefits. We see the cost will be implementing a new way of knowing and a new way of learning. So this would be the implementation cost of creating that better internet access for all students involved, or creating better classroom setups or study areas. But with any cost, you have the potential benefits. The potential benefits of this could be an increased enrollment rate. Students are seeing that this institution is really doing something different to enhance the learning during COVID, and so more students want to go there. And we see that with this enhanced learning that more students are succeeding, since it gives a option for students to remain healthy, but then also still get that in-class time that so many students want. Now we see all these rules are linked back to the creation and implementation of blended learning. Now that we have dived deep into the institutional and analysis and developmental framework and what the chapter in the book has to say about it, let's look at the article that is titled Development of an Institutional Framework to Guide Transition into Enhanced Blended Learning Higher Education. We see that it is a UK-based article and it addresses the challenges within learning and teaching during COVID and falls in line with our group's topic of education during COVID, providing some different methods that we might consider when implementing a policy dealing with this topic. First is the introduction. Throughout the introduction, you will notice that there are two main sections that really show how our landscape has changed and will probably forever be changed, and that blended learning has a lot to offer to this ever-changing landscape. The first section was the changing digital landscape. We see that the authors first note the changing digital landscape and how rapidly it has changed within the past 2 years. I noted this too. If you would have told me about 3 years ago that I would be conducting a presentation to be posted online for my peers to watch or be using Zoom almost daily, I would have laughed because prior to 2020, I had no clue what Zoom was. But here we are in the ever-changing digital landscape. Due to the ever-changing future and improvements in the digital landscape, all institutions are required to change their education methods. We're seeing that the varying methods of education include but are not limited to online learning or Zoom, AMI days, alternative method instruction days, and then these aren't necessarily varying methods of education, but they do impact education and teaching and learning. The COVID-19 protocols such as masks, social distancing, the amount of times you have to sanitize and re-clean surfaces. This is leading to the varying teaching methods, and students are losing interest in lessons since there's a lack of interaction and collaboration, which is ultimately guiding the way to an increase of dropouts, failing grades, and individuals having to retake core subjects. These constant changes are paving the path to the decrease in mental health being experienced by all and a decrease in student success. So you've heard me talk about it, you've heard me discuss it multiple times in the background. So what is blended learning? These implications and constant changing of the precautions regarding safety within a pandemic have led to more and more universities or institutions or school systems considering the topic of blended learning. While COVID has led to all individuals entering a new way of life, significant implications are occurring within the academic system. We see that a new essence is the topic of blended learning. Blended learning can be defined as a mixture of in-person and face-to-face learning. The subject of blended learning has been analyzed to generate profound and noteworthy understanding while maintaining the safety precautions of the ongoing pandemic. While blended learning is slowly becoming adopted around the nation by higher establishments, there are still numerous areas that have insignificant funds or options that are leading to a lack of a smooth transition for students, parents, teachers, and the administrators involved. To go deeper into blended learning, it seems that there are a handful of changes that are leading to the development and analysis of blended learning and how it can truly help the academic field. We see that the main ideas correlated within this development of framework is strategy, structure, and support. Strategy is the purpose, advocacy, implementation, scheduling, and evaluation. Structure is governance, models, scheduling, and evaluation. And then support is the technical and incentives offered.